Hello. In this lecture, we'll discuss about a very nice and common design pattern, which is a composite design pattern. So the outline of this lecture will be the following. We will first start with some examples that motivate the need for the composite design pattern. Then we will present it in detail, and we will have some discussions about it, about its advantages and its cons. So first, imagine that we want to describe or to design a system in which we have some file entries. So a file entries could be either a regular file, like there, or a folder, like there. And in a folder, you can put some different file entries. You can put also regular files or folders. So you have a recursive definitions. So it means that you have a tree structure. And the idea is how to model that efficiently in an object-oriented manner. But we have other examples of this kind of tree structures. For example, we could have the description of a document. So a document is composed of a title, a table of content, chapters. A chapter is composed of sections, and then some sections are composed of paragraphs, figures, lists, and subsections. So it means that you have a recursion there also. A section is composed of sections, etc. So how can we model that efficiently in an object-oriented system? And finally, a last example about this kind of tree structure. A diagram is composed of elements, and an element could be a circle, a segment, a text, or a group of elements. So it means a diagram. So now the question is, how can we draw diagram elements and diagram in a uniform way from the client's point of view? Can we avoid testing in the client side or check if we are trying to draw elements or diagrams? This is the point. And the answer is yes, of course we can. So to avoid this, it means that we need to have a common API between the elements and the diagrams. And for example, here in this design, so all elements, simple ones, which are called leaves, answer to the draw message there. But composite elements, here a diagram, is composed of graphic, and a graphic could be either a leaf or a diagram. So the recursion is in this link there. Here, a diagram is composed of elements, and we can add and remove elements, but it also understands the draw message. And this is the point. So the intent of the composite design pattern is the following. We want to compose objects in a tree structure to represent part whole hierarchies. And the idea is to let clients treat individual objects and composition objects uniformly, because they will answer to the same API. And for example, if in my client code I have an object called a graphic, I don't know if it is a composite one or if it is a leaf, but I can send the draw message, the same message, and it will respond accordingly, being a text, a circle, or diagram, a group of elements. So the essence of the composite design pattern is the following. This is a drawing that you can find in books. You have 4 different roles: the client, the component, a leaf, you may have multiple leaves, and a composite. And the recursion is in the composite class. So the essence of this composite design pattern, what is key, is that leaves and the composite offer the same API. This is this uniformity that avoid testing in the client's code, what we want to do. And then each leaf do something different. It just needs to implement the same API, but it's not mandatory to do the same thing. Each leaf can have a different operation. So the composite element offers the same API and plus some functionality to manage the children. So you can add and remove children in the composition. And of course, since they have the same API, leaves and composite are substitutable. Clients do not have to check. So let's go back to the example, and let's analyze all the participants in the design pattern to really understand the point. So first of all, we have the client, and the client can manipulate all objects in the composition through the component interface, and here the component interface is defined by the graphic card. the graphic class here. And it defines one method here. This is a draw method. So it means that all objects in the composition should understand the draw message. And now we have the component interface. So here, this is what we said. It declares the common interface for all objects in the composition. It may implement a default behavior. So here you can see that the draw method here could be either abstract or it could be concrete. It could provide a default implementation for all objects in the composition. And maybe you want to also declare here in the component accessor to manage children, but this is not mandatory. Then you have some leaves. And leaves, here we have three kinds of leaves, leaf. So a leaf represents an object with no children in the composition, and it defines a primitive operation, but it must conform to the common API. And finally, we have the composite there. So the composite also implements the polymorphic API. Here, this is a draw method. And basically, what does it do? It just forwards the message to all elements that are in the composite, all children, in fact. And of course, it has some operation. Here, this is add and remove, to add and remove elements in the composite. What is important is to understand that a design pattern is a name and an intent, but it can have multiple implementations with some pros and cons. For example, we could have a different implementation in a dynamically typed language. For example, this is not mandatory for the leaf class and the composite class here to have a common superclass, because what we need, in fact, this is a common API, and since they both implement the operation method here, it means that from the client point of view, they are polymorphic objects. So it means that I can send the message operation to both leaves and the composite elements, and it will work perfectly. Of course, not having a common superclass, this is not possible to share code between the leaves and the composite, and it is more difficult to recognize the composite design pattern. Another extreme implementation would be to only use one class, a composite class, and inside this representation with a single class, in fact, the leaves are replaced with a composite with no children. This is basic. The gain is not really clear, and in my opinion, this is not really a nice design, because if you have only a single class, you will not benefit from dispatching. Because if you remember correctly, when you're sending a message, you are making a choice. The system will make a choice. It will look up the method in the hierarchy class, and if the fewer class you have, the fewer choices you have. So usually this is much better to have a hierarchy of classes. There are some frequently asked questions about the composite design pattern that we can review now. Can the composite contain any type of child? Yes, definitely. The only thing that we need to take care is that they implement a common API. And for example, sometimes this is difficult when you want to introduce in your composite objects that comes from third-party libraries. So it means that perhaps you will need some adapters or wrappers to enforce this common API on these third-party objects. Can we limit the depth of a composite object, the number of children? Of course we can in the composite class. So it means in the add and remove methods, I can check the depth, for example. And then can we have different composites in the same system? Yes, and each composite in the system can have different constraints on different behavior. We may have some different variations about the composite behavior. So far, we only saw the simple forward message send. So it means that the composite will only forward the message to all children and merges the results without performing any other behavior. But it could also selectively forward the message to one of the children, conditionally, of course, or it can extend the behavior by adding an extra behavior and delegate to the leaves, or it can completely override the behavior of the leaves and have its own behavior. The composite design pattern is really interesting because it can work perfectly with other design patterns. For example, we will see that the composite and visitor are really nice together and play very nice together. And visitors, we will see it in another lecture. This is to implement specific operation on composite. But composite can also be used with factories because sometimes this is difficult to create this kind of tree structure, and using factories can help to have different kind of elements in the tree structure. As a conclusion, composite is about composing objects into tree structure to represent part wall hierarchies. Composite provides a uniform API to clients, so leaves and composite are treated uniformly by clients without checking anything. And the composite design pattern is completely extensible. This is really easy to add new type of leaves by subclassing. Of course, we will see that composite play very nicely with other design patterns such as visitor in a future lecture.